Thank you guys so much. Amazing worship set as always, and we appreciate you all. We appreciate everybody that's made everything happen this morning. So many moving parts and people volunteering and giving of their time, and so we always appreciate the effort to make that happen. Big time. We begin an Advent series this morning. Advent is a season of preparation, and so we're building up to Christmas, and it starts a little, depending on how the calendar falls, it always starts the same way, but we're still in November, but for today's the final day, and so we launch into December tomorrow, and so there's so much anticipation. That's the way the school system works. I've been doing that for a long time, and so it's always this. We come out of Thanksgiving, and now we make this approach to Christmas, and so the goal here is to prepare us, those of you who are believers, those of you who are part of the church, those of you who have been coming for a long time and have a relationship with Christ, to prepare our hearts to make this a season of giving, a season of anticipation, and a season of sharing that message with those who don't have it. Okay. Now we are fortunate and blessed to live in a rural community, and so most of the people in this community have heard, have some idea, but still, even in the midst of that, I think it's pretty easy to notice when you go into our stores, when you go into places. Sometimes I can just see it on the faces. Okay, I can just see a lostness. I see a hopelessness. I see you can sense it. Okay, if you're especially if you're a believer and do the things that I do and can read people that way, I can just look at people and tell. And so when God does that, then it gives you an opportunity to be able to share that we have, which is a message of hope. And today's message is centered around hope, and we begin the Advent season with that. And so the idea of understanding, because to kind of make this packageable so that we can understand it, is we equate this to feeling like what it feels like to be in the dark. Okay, have you ever been in a situation where you're in the dark? Now, I'll just tell you right up front, I don't like darkness, okay? And darkness and me are not friends. I never have been. I don't like it. I don't like it when I was a kid. I don't like it now. I can't sleep in the dark. If you put me in a dark room and turn all the lights off and get it completely dark, can't function, okay? I'm disoriented. I don't know where I'm at, and I got to have something, okay? I got to have some point of reference. I got to have some light, or I just can't do it. If I'm in a room that becomes dark when the power goes off, I'll wake up immediately. As soon as the light goes off, I'm awake, and so it just triggers me, and I'm up. And so I've always been that way, and so I don't like darkness. I really like light, okay? My wife says that I would like to live on the sun because I can get up and I will turn every light in the house on. And so in our kitchen, we have like 3 lights, okay? And so she's in there. She uses the little light on top of the coffee maker, and that's all she needs, right? And I'll go in and I turn them all on. I'll turn the stove light on. I got lights under my counter. I've got the big spotlights in the middle that shine down on what I'm cooking, and so I want to see everything. If I could live in an OR, okay, I would be happy because I like that kind of light. It's like I want everything bright and shining, and so I can see everything. I hate being in the dark. And so, because when you're in the dark, and not just literally, but figuratively, you're waiting and you don't know what's happening. And so this is a place that you get sometimes, and we've all been through this, right? We've all been through this. You're waiting for a call, okay? Medical tests are the worst, right? We're going to do this test, and we'll call you, right? And having somebody run a test like a CAT scan or an ultrasound. Ultrasound, I think, is probably the worst because I know people that do that, right? We all do. We all know ultrasound techs, and they'll tell you when you're not the patient, oh, I know what I'm seeing. Right? I know what I'm looking at because I've seen it before, right? And so they're scanning and they're looking and they're going, and so you're sitting there going, I want to know what you're seeing. And they won't tell you because they're not qualified to tell you, and they won't. And so then you're waiting for a phone call, right? And then you wait for the call, or you have a blood test, or you have some other kind of test, or you have something, and then you're just waiting for a message, right? You're waiting for a call. And in that period of time that you're waiting for that call, you're in the dark. And what's so hard is we feel really rough when we can't see progress, right? That's why when you call one of those places, it's like, thank you for calling, you're on hold, and you're listening to some really bad music, but you really want to know how long you're going to have to wait, right? And it's like, okay, we estimate that you're only going to have to wait 3.5 hours. And so it's like, oh, that's great. And then they update you as you go. And so if we can't see any kind of progress, then we just feel like we're lost and in the dark. Today's passage of Scripture came to Israel in a time in its existence that felt that way, okay? And what we're going to look at to help refresh us and to help us understand that waiting on God is always the same. It's in always His timing. And because we live in an instant gratification world, it usually is not quick enough for us. And we become really frustrated and we become impatient. And that's what we will find. Israel is in a place that was in the dark, and they can't. And what they were looking for is some type of spiritual reference. Okay, and so Isaiah chapter 9. Verses 2 through 7. As we begin this process moving toward Christmas and in the Advent, we begin with hope, and we begin back with the prophet Isaiah. In Isaiah chapter 9, he begins in verse 2, and this is what he says: the people walking in darkness. The people walking in darkness have seen a great light. On those living in the land of deep darkness, a light has dawned. You have enlarged the nation and increased their joy. They rejoice before you. As people rejoice at the harvest, as warriors rejoice when dividing the plunder. For as in the day of Midian's defeat, you have shattered the yoke that burdens them, the bar across their shoulders, the rod of their oppressor. Every warrior's boot used in battle, and every garment rolled in blood will be destined for burning, will be fuel for the fire. For to us a child is born. To us a son is given. And the government will be on his shoulders, and he will be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. Of the greatness of his government and peace there will be no end. He will reign on David's throne and over his kingdom, establishing and upholding it with justice and righteousness from that time on and forever. The zeal of the Lord Almighty will accomplish this. Isaiah comes out of the darkness. Okay? Isaiah comes from the darkness in a time of despair, in a time of political instability, and a time of Israel's spiritual decline. The Assyrian Empire is threatening and knocking on the door. God's people are at a place where they just feel abandoned and hopeless. And it was into that darkness, it was into that time, it was into that place that he said, for unto us a child is born. And here's the thing. It was still 700 years out. Okay? You think about that. If you're a believer, and those of us that have lived it and have been in his care for that long, have been saved for that long, we see it as normal, and it is. But to an outsider, to an unbeliever, to a lost person, it can be a little hard to get, right? How long has it been since Jesus? When you explain that Jesus died on the cross for your sins, he was buried, 3 days later he rose from the tomb. That's awesome. When did that happen? Well, it was a couple thousand years ago. What? Yeah, he's coming back. When did he promise that? 2,000 years ago. Well, when's he coming? I don't know, but soon. You see, to a lost person, that may sound insane, right? But when we look at it in the backdrop of Scripture, it's like, oh, he's right on time. He's moving at the pace that he's always moved. It's not anything different. This statement was 700 years before Christ was born. God makes promises in the dark. Okay? He makes promises when we're in a place. The people walking in darkness, okay? The people walking in darkness have seen a great light. God doesn't wait for the light. He doesn't wait for the world to get better before he speaks hope. We like to do that. That's human nature. Okay, it's human nature. It's human nature to try to get better before we go to the doctor. It is, especially if it's preventative, right? You look at it on the calendar and it's like a doctor's appointment, okay? All right, so I need to eat better, and I need to do this better, and I need to be better, and I need to try to be better, right? Before I go. Why do we do that? Because we don't want somebody to look at us and say, you're a mess, right? The same thing happens in church, right? Hey, why don't you come go to church with me? Okay, I will when I start living better, doing things better, acting better, talking better, having better habits, doing better things. When I get to be a better person, then I'll go to church. We flip it upside down. It happens all the time, right? We want to kind of be like we should be, right? Instead of having a relationship with God the Father who will reach us where we are and touch us where we are and change us where we are and speak into our lives where we are, we decide we want to try to do things on our own. But God will reach us in darkness. He speaks into the darkest places. We shared a plant science lesson with you guys a couple of weeks ago, talking about seeds growing. You know, plants have to have light to grow. They require some form of light, and they have to have the full spectrum in order to do well. But seeds germinate in the dark, in the soil, under the ground. God begins moving there, right? The germination process takes place, the leaves emerge, the roots begin to grow. All those things begin to grow in the dark place, right? It begins to happen then. He speaks into the darkest places. You can't see anything happening, but life is forming. God is always at work. When we can't always see Him working, He is working. And that's hard to get our head around sometimes. It's hard to understand that God is at work when we can't see it because we like to see what's happening all the time. If there's something that God has promised you, that you've kind of got to the point where you're like, I don't think He's going to do it, right? Is there something that God has promised you that you've just stopped believing that He can do? You see, in the world that we live in, it's easy to get discouraged. It's easy to get discouraged. And the reason why is because we tie our discouragement and we tie our belief sometimes to our circumstances, right? We get into a certain circumstance and then we don't. And it happens to the very best, right? Jesus said that among people born of women, there was nobody greater than John the Baptist, okay? But when John was in prison, he was looking around his walls of his prison and the dungeon that he was in going, this is not going to end well, and it didn't for him, for his life on this earth. And in his circumstance, he was like, I don't even know if He's Jesus. I don't even think He is. Will you all go ask Him if He's it? Because I just don't know. And the circumstances that we get in will cloud even the greatest people, right? It clouds the greatest people. When we're in a place, when our health fails, when we're not able to do the things that we're able to do, that we feel like we should be able to do, when those things happen, then all of a sudden our judgment gets clouded and we find ourselves in a certain circumstance and we begin to doubt God. God's promises are never dependent on our circumstance, okay? They're never dependent on our circumstance. When Isaiah come to Israel in their darkness, when he comes to Israel in this passage that we're looking at today, the Assyrians are about to come, and all of these things, the whole thing, their whole world is about to fall apart. And he's like, look, He's coming. He's coming. He's not going to forget you. There is going to be one who will come. And so it doesn't depend on where we are. Number 2 this morning, God's promises take time, but He never forgets. His timing is always perfect. This, as I said, this was prophesied 700 years before Jesus was born. I love Christmas presents. I like giving them more than receiving them at this stage of my life, and I like spending time with all the kids and the grandbabies. But this is that fun time of the year when gifts begin to appear. I remember I shared this story. I didn't have it in my notes, but I got to thinking about this when I was reviewing this story. I remember a certain gift that Mom got me when I was a kid. I was probably 12 years old, And I can't. It's not like it's like one of those gifts that changed my life. It was just, but it made me have a different perspective on gifts. She wrapped it. It was in a box. I can still see the box. It was about like this. Okay, it was about 6 inches square. It was about 2 inches thick. Had red paper and had a bow that you use the scissors to make them curl. And so she wrapped the thing and it had my name on it. And it was under the tree. And I was probably 12 years old. Somewhere in that vicinity of time, and so I would go and I found it and it was under there and it had my name on it, and so I'm trying to guess the gift, right? And so I would pick the box up and I would shake it, and it would move inside the box, Mike. It would move, and so I'd be like, okay, it's moving, and then it had a jingle, right? There was something metal in there, and so I would just shake it, and I was like, what could this be? You know, it's moving inside the box. It's not super heavy, but it's got some weight to it. And, so I would shake the box, and then I would try to think of what it was, and I would put it back under the tree, and then I would leave it for a while, and I'd come back, and I'd pick it back up again, and I would shake it, and I would go, what is this? What could it be? And I tried to figure out what it was, and I never figured it out. And I remember Christmas Eve came, and I opened it up, and I was so excited to open that gift because I wanted to know what it was. It was a belt. Okay? It was a belt. It was a leather belt, and because I loved to wear the belt buckles back then, right? Dad used to get them at the mines, and we had all these real cool interchangeable belt buckles, and it was an interchangeable belt that you could put different buckles on. And I opened it up, and I was like, holy cow! It made the sound. The belt thing was in there, and it was a piece of leather, and so it was moving back in the box. And I never could figure it out. But there was never a time in that process that I kept shaking that I ever doubted that there was something in the box. I was convinced from the moment that I picked it up that there was a gift in that box, and I just didn't know what it was, but I was convinced there was something there, right? And when I opened it, when the time came to actually open the gift, lo and behold, there was a gift in the box. Do we ever have any trouble believing that? I mean, when you can shake it and you can hear it and you can feel it and you can know, sometimes when we can't see it, and we even don't know what it is, doesn't mean that it's not real. And so when Jesus has promised his return, when Isaiah promised the people here that he was coming, that he would be born, that a child would be born, 700 years before it happened, they couldn't see it. They couldn't understand all of the pieces that was going to have to come together for that to happen. But it did not mean that the promise was not real. God gave Israel a promise that a son was coming. It took a long time, but it happened. It happened. And so we have to go back in order to be able to go forward. When you're sharing a gospel message with somebody, when you're helping someone to understand, when you're telling somebody that Jesus is coming back, but it's been 2,000 years since he ascended, they look at you a little bit weird. But you got to take them back thousands of years before and say, this has been going on for a long time, and it doesn't change who God is. His promise goes all the way back to Genesis 3, when the seed of the woman who would crush the serpent, right? And all of the things, all of the stories, all of the things that this promise has survived, the flood, the wandering, the exile, empires up and down, and all the kings of Israel, all the kings of Judah, all of those things that happened. And then in between, when we come to Malachi, when we come to the end of the Old Testament, there's a period of 400 years where there's nothing. There's nothing. Can you imagine that time period? Has anybody heard anything new from God? Nope. Nothing. And then Zechariah goes to the temple to do what he does, right? I'll go light the candles one more time. I'll go burn the incense. I'll go do it one more time. And then all of a sudden, out of the darkness, an angel says, do not be afraid. Do not be afraid. And God spoke, and it became something, and it became real. If God said he's going to do it, he will do it. Sometimes we think time is our enemy. I think as believers, we need to realize that time is a gift. Every day that we have, every opportunity that we have to witness to someone, every opportunity we have to do an act of kindness, to get someone's attention, to help them pay attention, to help share with them the gospel message is a gift that we have been given. If God said it, he will do it. Number 3 this morning, Jesus is the fulfillment of every promise. Unto us a child is born, unto us a son is given. Every title that he refers to Jesus in this passage, every title points to why Jesus is our hope. The first thing he calls him is a wonderful counselor. A wonderful counselor. The one who gives us advice. It's puzzle season in Mom and Dad's house. They like to work puzzles. And I love to see how that works. And so here's the thing about it. And they've got like a pretty cool deal, right? They've got puzzle things that like these are professional puzzle people. Okay, this is not just get down on the floor and work a puzzle, right? They've got things that you can work them, and they've got lights that I like, the bright and the magnifying and the sorting boxes and all the things. But here's something that's very important for a puzzle. If you're going to work a puzzle, you have to have a picture. You have to have an end result, right? If you're working a puzzle, you look at the picture and you're like, this is what I'm doing. This is what I'm building. Okay, this is what I'm going to do. You can take a picture just like that and turn it into a puzzle. And then so you have all of these. You can imagine a picture that large, breaking it into pieces that are about 3/4 to an inch in pieces with all kinds of different shapes. And then you pour that all into a box and then you dump it on a table. And then you have to assemble this, right? But the only way you can assemble that at all is to be able to see what it looks like in the end. Our lives are like that. Okay, we have all these little pieces of our life. We have our childhood, and we have all these little episodes and things that happen in our childhood, and we have our young adulthood, and then we have all of these things. Okay, people that we meet, people that we care about, people that we marry, children that we have, grandchildren that we have. All of these things that are happening in life. All of these things are little puzzle pieces, and the only person who knows what that looks like is God. He's the only one who knows what it's supposed to look like. So if you don't consult him, if you don't consult the picture that you're putting together, then your puzzle's going to be a mess. And what we try to do sometimes is if it won't fit, we tend to want to get a razor blade and be like, we're going to make it fit, right? And then now we're in trouble, right? Because now you don't have a piece that fits somewhere else. And so what does he say? He is the wonderful counselor. He is the one that we consult. He is the one that goes through, and he's the one that knows what a finished product is supposed to be. And so we have to ask him. Jesus is the divine God who knows the way forward. When you find yourself in a place of darkness, in a place of confusion, or in a place trying to figure out how all these pieces fit together, how is this mess of my life supposed to work, he's the one who knows what it looks like. And so he's the one that has the answer. Right? And that answer is also provided to us in Scripture. That's where we find the picture, right? That's where we find the picture, and those pieces of the puzzle begin to come together. Next, he calls him Mighty God. He has the power to break chains. He has the power to restore what's been broken. He's the one that we turn to. It calls him Everlasting Father. He is constant. He is unchanging. We are able to come home to him, knowing that he is stationary. He's the everlasting Father. He is that one that's in the middle of the darkness. He's that stationary thing, right? If you're in a room that's complete and total darkness, but in the middle of that room you have a chair that's bolted to the floor, and you start out sitting in that chair when the light goes out, and the chair can't move, then now you have a point of reference, right? The chair is pointing in a direction, and so as the chair is pointing in the direction, you know then left and right, up and down, forward and backward. And so as you begin to explore out into that dark room and you're trying to find something, if you come back, you just have to find your way back to the chair. And when you find the chair, now you again have your point of reference. That's God. That's God in our lives. Sometimes we wander off. Sometimes we find ourselves lost. Sometimes we find ourselves groping, right? Sometimes we find ourselves looking for something solid. Right? But we have to come back to what is stable. We have to come back to what is anchored. We have to come back to what is known. He is the everlasting Father, and we can come home to him. And finally, he calls him the Prince of Peace. I'm not just talking about the peace that we see on the news or the peace that people talk about or an agreement that somebody signs. We talk about the peace within us. No matter how much chaos is going on in the world around us, that we can come to a place in our lives where we can just go, this is okay. This is where I'm supposed to be. This is what I'm supposed to be doing. and I'm good here. This is right. We don't put hope in a season. We don't put our hope in government. We don't put our hope in people or even in ourselves. We put our hope in Jesus. We put our hope in Jesus. He is the promise that has been fulfilled. Last thing this morning, final thought this morning. Hope is a choice that you make. Okay? Hope is a choice that you make. It's not a feeling that you wait for. Okay? It's not a feeling that you wait for. Hope isn't optimism. It's an anchor. Okay? I've never been to the Great Lakes, but I'm kind of a Great Lakes geek. This is the 50th year of the sinking of the Edmund Fitzgerald. I've always been fascinated by that story and the song and those things. And so I've always read about the storms, the gales of November, as Gordon Lightfoot put it, and what it gets like. And if you've been watching the weather this week, you know that this past week has been wild up there, okay? It's just been wild. The lakes have been crazy. Lake Erie, I forget the Seiche or whatever it's called, but it's an effect where the winds from the west blow, and so Lake Erie literally emptied on the western side and it piled up against Buffalo. And so on this side in Toledo, in this area, there's no water. The lake's gone. It just blew out. And so it's literally caused by the wind. It blows the lake, and the lake's more shallow than the other Great Lakes, and so it blows it, and so there's no water here and all the water's over there, and so the water level here, right? And so when that's happening, the ships, now we have a lot better technology. We know it's coming, and so they have to prepare for it. And so they're like, hey, you can't be here because there's not going to be any water here, so you got to go somewhere else. And so they find safe spots on the lakes, in bays, in places where there's plenty of water and away from the rocks, and they put down anchor. Okay, they have these little trackers now, and you can see them, and it's like, they're all huddled up, right? In Whitefish Bay, there's all these ships, and they're all in a circle. They're all close to each other, so they can communicate with each other, and they're anchored deep with slack in the chain, so that they can rise and fall with the waves, right? And that's how they survive the storm. That's how they survive the storm. How do they make it? It's not because they're in calm water. It's because of the anchor. The anchor keeps the ship from drifting, holds the ship in place. This week we're talking about hope, because the hope that we have is our soul's anchor. Okay? Hope is the anchor of our soul. It's what we cling to. It's what we connect to. When we put our hope in Christ, we have anchored deep. We put slack in the chain, and then we're able to ride the storms. Okay? We're able to ride the storms, and so that is how we survive through that. And this is what we are able to know, and this is what we walk away with, and this is our walking point, is that God keeps His promises. God keeps His promises. Just as He had promised that He would send a child. Okay, for thousands of years before and throughout the Old Testament history, He's been moving in this direction. And the prophet Isaiah steps onto the pages of history and says, "For unto us a child is born," 700 years before He was. And so He promised that He was coming, and He came. And so in these weeks as we approach Christmas, just like Israel waited in darkness, just like they held on to promises that they couldn't see, we also wait. There are people in our community that are waiting for healing. There are people in our community that are waiting for restoration. There are people around us that are waiting for answers. And we are waiting for Jesus to come again. And this is what we have to know. Just as sure as God kept His promise in Bethlehem, just as sure as those babies' cries were heard 2,000 years ago, He will return. His promised return is just as sure. Where are you today? Where are you today? It's possible that you're here and you're possibly in spiritual darkness. Maybe you're looking for light. I know what that feels like. Okay, it's very off balance. That's the way I would be when I was a kid. I would wake up in the dark when the lights would go off or the power would go off. I would wake up immediately. I would get out of bed and I would start staggering around, right? And it's very unstable, and I would be lost, and I would be afraid, and I would be trying to find some point of reference, right? Searching for light. And that may be you. Maybe you're in a place in life where you're just searching, you're just looking, and it feels like you're roaming and you're aimless. Let me assure you, Jesus is the hope that you seek. He is the light that you seek. And I hope and I pray that when you come into a room like this with a body of believers who are singing songs and lifting His name on high and worshiping and praise Him and greeting you and putting their arm around you and extending their hand in fellowship to you, that you feel that you understand that you see that you sense that you get that Jesus is hope. And that you can come to Him today. And if you don't have Him, don't leave here without Him. And if you have Him, well, share Him with someone. When you go from this place, the world that you're going to enter is darker than it is in here. And so share that light that you have with those that are around you. And let me pray for us all.